not one thing that the federal government has attempted to do is going to make any difference. They're saying that we have to get rid of assault weapons. But if you listen to them, they're not saying assault weapons, they're saying assault style weapons, which means virtually anything. If it looks like it, if it quacks like it, it's gonna go. Most of that's already been deemed unconstitutional when Sheriff Richard Mack back in the 90s challenged the Brady Act and took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won. That was deemed unconstitutional. And I should have brought those little booklets. I've got a bunch of those that I could have handed out. But even this issue with high capacity magazines and that, let's take this lady in Georgia just last week that was able to fend off a home invader. She was on the phone with her husband, and he said, just do as I taught you, get up into the attic and protect that doorway. And as he came through, he said, shoot. So she shot 5 times. And he's on the phone saying, shoot him again. She hit him 5 times. I think once in the face, once a little bit in the neck, and 3, in various parts of his body. He didn't go down. He walked out, got in his car and drove away. He's caught later, but supposing there would have been 2 assailants, 2 home invaders, 3 home invaders. Most home invasions are not done by one person. So high capacity magazines, is that a good reason to have that? You're darn right. And President Obama's looking at dropping the capacity down to 7 rounds. That's ludicrous. Okay. They talk about military style weapons and all of this. What they don't understand is that all of this stuff they're talking about is actually old technology. We're talking, turn of the 20th century, and actually a little bit earlier than that. Machine guns were invented clear back in the 1800s. Okay, but this is all old technology. John Browning from Morgan was the inventor of the 1911 and had 110 different patents for the military. All old technology today. So what is an assault weapon? You look back 250 years, you're talking about a musket that had no rifling, and you're lucky to hit 1 out of 10 shots where you're aiming. Okay. Before that, crossbows, spears, bow and arrow, those were all assault weapons of those days, if that's what you want to call them. We've got to protect our constitutional rights, and I applaud the Sheriff's Association for doing what they've done. They are the ultimate law enforcement entity in each county. They are the only law enforcement in the nation that's actually, well, not actually only the only one that's elected. In some states, we still have a few constables that are also elected. They're also sworn officers. But we don't have that here. But we've got the sheriff, who's the only elected police officer. Mandates. They're here to protect us. And thanks, Sheriff. Appreciate you doing that. And all the sheriffs, save one. 28 of the 29 sheriffs signed on to this. So thank you very much, Sheriff.
I'll be brief with my comments. I think most of you are here because of the position that I took earlier.
Hey, I love that. 1911 on the clock.
See what I'm carrying? Good karma. This evening I wanted to take a few minutes and address some pressing issues that we have. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of fervor coming into the office via email and phone calls, and this all obviously followed the devastating incident in Connecticut. And there's not a sheriff in this state that doesn't feel horrible about that. And I don't think there's anybody in public safety that doesn't feel horrible about those type of incidents. But when the reality comes back to everything, and we start taking a step back and looking at it, evaluating what we can do as law enforcement to prevent these type of incidents from happening in the future. Gun control is not one. We've already went down that road in the past with the Brady, and they did a 10-year run of the Brady bill, and both the CDC and the DOJ, the Department of Justice, did evaluations following that Brady bill, and both of them found that there was absolutely no change in violent crimes or change in gun usage in the commission of those crimes. So, this comes right back to Einstein's theory of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. We need to talk about direct issues that will resolve the problems. That's stricter enforcement of the existing laws. That's enhancements that we have right now on the crimes with the use of a weapon involved. That's dealing with some of the stuff that President Obama talked about. That we're not against everything of what he talked about. Dealing with mental health issues within the United States. We have mental health issues within the United States that we have to figure out how we're going to deal with it. Simply standing in front of everybody and giving them an executive order saying that we're going to start looking into it doesn't solve the problem. The problem lies in the fact that who's going to end up paying for it. What structure are you going to use in order to be able to deal with those individuals? How much of their civil rights are you going to intrude upon, in dealing with their mental health issues? I know this firsthand. My aunt had a pretty significant mental health issue, and these are some of the things that I dealt with when I was young. The letter, just to talk briefly about the letter. The letter was stated today by the governor as being a little premature, and I kind of smile at that because it wasn't premature, it did, and that was before we go into these discussions on a congressional level, that the congressmen, the House of Representatives, the senators, no one understand what the feeling of the executive branch, which is us, is. And that is defined in that letter. And that's exactly what our aim was to do, is to inform them of what our feelings are about protecting the civil rights of our citizens. And ultimately, do we have to find some answers, to these questions that we have out there in front of us? And we do. But it doesn't walk down the road of intruding upon people's civil rights. And it goes along with how do we enforce laws and create laws that are enforceable. There's one thing about creating a law. There's a totally different side to try to enforce that law. And that's one of the things you get when you've been in public safety for so long, because it's frustrating. I can lay out a book and I can show you all the laws that exist and how many of the laws we can actually get passed through our county attorney and in the federal courts to be able to enforce them. So writing the laws are totally different than enforcing the laws. Anyway, the last part about it, and I think this is what stirred the people the most and made it sound with the governor as though this was premature, was our feeling and our take that we took an oath as sheriffs to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And where he might not feel as strongly about it, we as sheriffs do. And when we took that oath, we promised to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that support and defending the Constitution of the United States will go with me as long as this star is on my shoulder. So although he thinks it's premature, this is something that we've had and we've known and we've lived by for years. Just us bringing it back up to light and talking about it shouldn't have been any surprise to the governor or anybody else. And furthermore, this isn't just a Utah issue, just so everybody knows. This statement that we made here in Utah is being made all over the United States, from sheriffs all over the United States, from Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Utah, New Mexico, Texas, obviously. Right? We even have sheriffs in Oregon, you know, California, Nevada, signing on and saying the very same thing. And that is, when we go into this discussion, when we go into these congressional meetings, that they know what our feeling is. And that feeling doesn't just come from the state of Utah, it comes from all the citizens in the United States. So with that being said, I am open for your questions.
Legislation just recently proposed that would make it illegal for a federal officer to try and enforce a federal gun law in Utah. Is that true?
Republican, or it's Representative Green.
Ryan Green.
And,
Utah County.
And I think it's being written right now. I haven't seen a copy of it. It's being written?
It's still being drafted. I've seen the first draft.
Similar to the one in, I think,
Wyoming.
Yeah. And your position on if they try and come and confiscate.
Sure. I've heard a little bit about House Bill 75, which is basically changing Utah to be a constitutional carry state.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Like, again, you know, to me, it's one of those things. Do you still need the concealed weapons permit? I would say absolutely, because, you know, there are several surrounding states that accept it. Whether a person that should have the right to have that gun packs a gun, I have no problem with that at all. Again, on the backside of this, my job is to keep people safe in my county. So will we enforce and will we go after criminals that have guns and all the restricted people that have guns and drug runners and things like that? Absolutely. If you lawfully have a gun and constitutionally carry that gun, I have no problem with that at all.
In order to travel in reciprocal states, you still have to have a permit. Okay? What this does is just merely puts us equivalent to Alaska, Arizona. Wyoming just passed it last year, but it only applies to Wyoming residents. Okay. Basically the bill says, it was originally my bill, but Representative Mathis begged me for it, so I gave it to him. But he, basically, for anyone 21 or older, as long as they're not restricted from being around a firearm, and not have all these other problems or anything like that, as long as they're perfectly legal and legal firearms, they can carry a concealed loaded weapon. Okay. We've already had a version of that for the last 2.5 years. It's called car carry. So anyone who's law-abiding citizen could carry, that's a proper age, and that could carry a loaded concealed weapon in their car. Once you get out, you try to put it on yourself, then it's got to be, if you don't have a permit, that's got to be unloaded, open, or in case. Okay?
The person would not have to have a concealed carry license to carry?
While you're in Utah.
And then is it open, does it have to be exposed, or could it be concealed?
Base standard in Utah is already open carry. I don't like the open carry myself. I like the element of surprise. Okay, but that's the base standard in Utah. That is perfectly legal, whether you have a permit or not.
A copy of the letter?
Right here.
You have it right there.
Thank you.
Sheriff already got some ready, and I brought some too.
Back in New Jersey, Livingston, New Jersey, after Hurricane Sandy, and while I was gone, my wife had a pistol on her nightstand, and I felt better being back helping those people, knowing that my wife was able to defend herself and my son had anything happen while I was gone, and I definitely support you and all that you've done to help me and my family feel a lot more secure in our county and in our city. So just wanted to say thank you and appreciate everything you've done for us.
Well, again, you know, I want you to know that when we wrote this letter, again, it was kind of a line in the sand, if you will. It says that you guys can talk about all you want, but when it comes down to it, this is the line that we're not going to let have crossed. So, I think if you read the letter, though, you'll see that it was very well written. Just so you guys know, I wasn't the one that wrote the thing. We all kind of.
But he was thinking it.
We had our esteemed president, Dave Edmonds, that's out of Summit County. He's the sheriff in Summit County. We were emailing everybody with what we wanted to have put in, taken out, and this was the final draft that we came up with. So this was a collective thing between all the sheriffs and making sure that all the talking points were hit, and Dave Edmonds did a great job on putting it to word and making sure that it was done in a professional manner. So my hat goes off to Dave. He did a great job. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if it's more for you or for Representative Oda. They're talking about there needs to be some restrictions or some research on the mental health side of things. And the way the federal government has said it, it's so broad that it could include some mother that has postpartum depression. It could include a child that is on Prozac to help them with depression, that is no threat, has done nothing wrong. My concern is that, yes, we do need to look into the mental health part of it, but we need to make sure not to go too extreme. We need to find a happy medium in the middle.
And that's exactly the point that I was trying to make is you know, there's a lot of things that need to be discussed and debated about this issue, from the parameters we're going to use in those in the civil rights of the individual, up to where's the money going to come from in order to be able to implement these type of changes. One of the things that I did notice when we were looking through this, and I don't know how many of you know that really, I think only 3 of these executive orders has been signed right now. Everything else is kind of up in the air. So we're kind of looking at it as pseudo orders, because really they're just hypothetical thoughts that are put down on paper in front of us saying, these are the things he's looking at. Well, when I put something out, that's usually finished product, and when we're going to go forward, it's something that is clear, concise. If it's something that we're going to debate in a legislative level, it's spelled out there. This is the general thought process, and this is my thoughts on where we're going to go. We're going to go to the legislature to do this. And really, we don't have any clear-cut direction as to which way he's going to go with these executive orders, and that's one of the things that I think is fed into this, I don't want to say fear, but this thought process that's out there, and where people are looking and saying, can they write banning magazines as being an executive order and get away with it? Can they expand it out to taking guns away? Or is it 100% going to go to the Congress in order to be debated and talked about in Congress? Obviously, that's why one of the things that you'll see in my letter, this is not my letter, in the letter, it says that we do not have to adhere as sheriffs to executive orders. So he can executive order away as long as it's within the federal government. That just tells, and arranges how they utilize funds and do procedural order within the federal government. It doesn't have any application to the sheriffs here whatsoever.
On your bit about mental health, I'm actually working with Congressman Chaffetz on some issues, and we're discussing some possibilities. But the problem is there's mental health is so vague, okay, that you can't put your finger on any one issue. One of the biggest problems is Fox News actually did, national, actually did a study on the mass shooters and found that their figure was 70% of the shooters were either on psychotropics or had recently gotten off of psychotropics. My research shows it's closer to 83%, and I think I'm low. Okay? Problem is, at what point do we determine somebody to be a danger to themselves or others? And you're right, we don't want such vague, broad reaching of what's mentally ill that the administration comes out and says, every one of you people that own a gun, we think you're nuts, okay? And that can happen. We don't know. But that's why we need to get to the root cause first and say, where is really the problem? Because I'd say probably at least 9.9% or 9.9 out of 10 are not going to be a dangerous threat. They might be loony. They might just sit there and talk to themselves, but they're not going to be a dangerous threat to us. Okay, so how do we separate them? Those are some things we're going to have to come out with. The other thing, pharmaceuticals. Where's the line here? You look at the phone book. I'll bet you don't find more than one psychiatrist, licensed psychiatrist, in Weaver County and one in maybe Davis County, maybe a couple in Salt Lake County. Tons of psychologists, but only psychiatrists in the mental health arena are able to prescribe psychotropic drugs. Psychologists can't. Okay? So who's prescribing all these? Family physicians. Are they trained? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. So do we need to look at that? Do we need to maybe look at getting psychologists an additional extension on some pharmacology training to be able to prescribe? Maybe. There's all kinds of stuff we've got to look at. Okay, so this isn't something that's going to be solved overnight. We're probably looking at a year, 2 years down the road before we can even come up with this much of the answer. The answer is going to be this much, and we're only going to get to that far because it's too vague.
Sheriff, I just want to say thank you again for your stand and kind of echo what a lot of people have said. I guess I have a question and maybe an idea or a thought. My question is what as citizens can we do? Is there a petition we can sign? What can we do to get behind you and help you in that way? And I guess I'm in the National Guard, stationed in American Fork, and I've kind of, I guess my experience is people fear what they don't understand. So is there any thoughts into like maybe a class, an awareness class, maybe show people that don't know, that have never handled a firearm or anything like that, to show, hey, this is the workings, maybe do something like that. If you need help, I'd be more than happy to volunteer, help for personnel for that. I guess, what are your thoughts?
You know, the best thing that you can do to help me right now is to spread the word that everything's fine. That although this stuff is out there in the forefront, that we have a pretty good handle of what's going on. And we have Facebook accounts out there. And if you start hearing stuff coming out on Facebook saying that we're starting to change course, that's when we'll give you direction as to what's happening and where I'm going to need the help out. You know, my biggest concern right now is that people understand that there is a lot of debate that's going to be going on. I don't foresee anybody coming door to door. Like I said, the amount of amendments that would violate are, I could probably set a textbook and throw them out for about an hour. But the reality is, I'm here to protect you. Public safety is our #1 concern. When things start rolling that way, you'll know about it. Other than that, on the gun safety part of it, if you'd like, there are several organizations throughout the United States.
Take my class.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is there are several of these concealed carry permit classes that are out there. And a lot of people, even though they're trained, take the concealed weapons permit classes because they learn different nuances. You know, it's like being a police officer versus being a fireman. You know, there's different thought process on how we look at things versus a fireman look at things. And make sure to tell your friends, your family members, anybody that owns a gun to take these classes. If nothing more, if you don't want to carry the gun, just having it in your house, they teach you how to secure the gun, make sure you know how to handle the gun, make sure that you know the nuances of safety, you know, with the gun, and spread that to your neighbors and anybody else that, again, that have this interest and feel like, you know, they want to get more information, or they feel a little nervous. Just tell them that, you know, things are doing well, and that, again, if we have a course change, you'll know about it.
Recently, Utah made national news when some pictures of a man carrying an AR-15 in a department store went viral. And I personally moved to the belief that careless exercise of rights could lead to infringement. How do you feel about that issue and your advice?
Well, in fact, I think there's a bill going in that's a disorderly bill, and I got to tell you, there's on a law enforcement level, there's what we try to do to, again, maintain public safety. Public safety means that anybody can go into JCPenney's and feel like they can go shopping without some guy walking and shooting the place up. And a lot of this has to do with intent. Did the individual show up there because he just got out of the mountain, didn't want to leave his gun in the car, and he was going to run in really quick, grab something, get back out, and go out to his car? No. He showed up there with the intent to scare people. That's why he did it, you know. They found out, you know, he stated that, you know, he called the police department. He didn't call the police
Actually, they
department.
did find
Did
they found the audio.
Oh, there you go. So his intent was to make a statement. And these are the things that I think that bill is supposed to address. It's not to affect law-abiding citizens. So if you're out in the parking lot and you're moving your guns from your buddy's truck back into your truck after you're done shooting, that the police can't roll up on you and cite you with disorderly conduct. That you have to have an intent to scare people and to create mayhem, you know.
If I can add a little bit to that, my name's Brent Peters, I'm the undersheriff. A lot of people in this country believe that their rights are absolutes, that every right that they have is an absolute, and that is false. You cannot run into a theater, a packed theater, and yell fire and then claim, but I have freedom of speech.
When there was not a fire.
When there's not a fire, and claim that I have freedom of speech in order to do that. I think what the sheriff's saying is the exact same principle here. People look, my right to bear arms is an absolute, and that therefore I can carry it wherever I want, even if it means in a reckless manner that may cause, you know, anxiety and or alarm to other people in the public.
You remember that fellow a couple of years ago that down at the University Mall? He basically did the same thing, except he was carrying a rifle here and a handgun here. Didn't have any ammunition. But the difference between he and this guy at the JCPenney's, this guy at least was carrying the gun strapped on his back here, okay? So it wasn't an immediate threat. This, not for most people not knowing, that's in the ready position, okay? If he's got ammunition, it doesn't take much to come up with that. But if he's carrying it, there was no threats, no threatening comments, no threatening gestures or anything of that nature. But his big thing was he was trying to make a political statement. Making political statements, to me, is disorderly conduct. Whether you actually make that happen or not, you're there to make a statement. If you're just going about your business, okay, and I go into JCPenney's or something with my sidearm, if I'm wearing it openly, okay, I'm just shopping. I'm not doing anything else. That's not disorderly conduct. So we've had some jurisdictions, primarily University of Utah, okay, a couple of other universities and a couple of small cities, basically use disorderly conduct as a de facto way of banning firearms. Okay? This bill, run by Representative Paul Ray out of Clinton, is basically saying unless there is threatening comments or threatening verbiage or threatening gestures or action that does not rise to that level.
Little America down in Salt Lake City, where the call that we had was a guy in fatigues walking down the road with a weapon. And almost an identical thing. When the police officer pulled up just to chat with the guy, the round started coming the police officer's way. And so obviously he returned fire and ended the situation. But that's that kind of delicate thing that you have to do on a daily basis as a police officer, is to kind of, and be able to balance people's civil rights and versus the safety of others. And because our job is not to step on people's civil rights, but it's also to keep a guy from walking into Little America and killing a bunch of people. So that's that delicate balance that you have to make in the split decision as a police officer. And in this case, the split decision was when he was ducking because he was taking rounds, and he was able to get rounds off back.
That guy was also actually in full combat here too. I mean, he was wearing camo. I think he was having some kind of helmet.
I don't know if you
I think it's obvious that sheriffs throughout the United States are beginning to respond by preparing letters such as this. It would be interesting and maybe a set of precedents is if the next time we had a gathering at the state capitol, if we had 20+ sheriffs standing there behind the podium.
Well, I think in this legislative session, you're going to see this happen. I think there's a meeting that we have that some of the sheriffs are going to be at next week, in fact. So there is a unified front, and believe me, we're still going to give the opportunity for the Salt Lake County Sheriff to come up to speed and sign on to the letter. It's not, there will be the space open there for him, so that he can put his name to it.
I agree that freedoms need to be exercised with discretion. It's kind of a citizen responsibility. I'm a little curious about, do you know any of the criteria that would discern disorderly conduct from, I guess,
well, you know, and I haven't read the bill yet, but one of the beautiful things about our democracy is once it gets in there and gets into the legislature, people have an ability to do what they do best, which is take representatives from throughout the state and debate it and refine the issue and add and take away, just like that letter was written. That's how laws are written. And what I'll do is when the bill comes out, I'll post it on my Facebook page so that people, you guys can have access to it, so you can see it as it's, you know, developing. But one of the things that I'm sure Representative Oda will tell you is that, and I've noticed this when I go up to the House quite regularly when the legislature is in, and I read a bill on Monday, and it looks totally different on Tuesday, which totally looks different on Wednesday. And then when the final product comes out, I think for the most part, you have a fairly good bill that's been debated and refined. Occasionally that's not the case, but you know, that's what our system is all about. That's why, again, referring back to our statement in there about executive orders, that's why we don't look at executive orders, because that's a mandate from one person.
Safety in schools. Can you share your feelings on what, if anything, needs to be changed here in our local area?
You know, school safety again is one of those things that it's not a new thing. It's we've had to deal with it multiple times before. Do I think that throwing a police officer in every school is going to rectify the problem? I'll tell you no. Columbine, for instance, you know, exactly. What are some real things I think that need to be discussed is how we're designing our schools, how we allow access in and out of our schools, the safety that we put into the glass, you know, around the periphery of the school. The individual in the new town shot the window out, you know, walked through the window. So it's not gonna help us if we create a choke point, much like we do at at the courts where people are, you know, coming through to make sure that they're not coming in with firearms to shoot the kids up, and yet we put glass in, you know, that you're gonna have to have less in. And some of these things we're gonna have to adjust with, again, the facilities and how we're building the facilities, and if you were to mix how we build our facilities with a response plan and how law enforcement's gonna take, you know, and handle that, and then add a police officer in the school. Once you get a conglomeration of the whole group and a firm plan set, that's when we're really gonna see a safer environment for these kids.
We've also got, you know, as the sheriff indicated, construction of schools. If you look at most of these new schools today, there's way too much glass, way too much open space. There's no place to take cover, period. And a lot of them have basically said that the teachers have no ability, they're restricting them from putting anything opaque on the glass. A lot of that was done because they didn't want the teachers well, they wanted visibility so that they could, in case a teacher decided to do something inappropriate. But there's other ways to handle that. The whole idea here is to give more security, and I think every one of us here ought to be talking to our school board members and everything, and tell them, let's build the schools with a little bit more security built into it. We're looking at several different ways to possibly make schools more secure, including allowing teachers to be armed. Okay, we're the only state over the last 12 years, up until just recently, that allowed concealed permit holders in schools. And if you look at the western states, we're actually kind of a hole in the donut. We really haven't had the shootings in schools that the other states have had. Whether that's because we allow it or not, we don't know. There's no way to know that. And as the sheriff said, there's absolutely no way we can ever stop an attack. Okay, we can never absolutely stop attacks. What we can do is to do all we can to mitigate the carnage, keep that at a minimum. That's going to be the ultimate. To be able to absolutely stop it, we're going to have to turn every school into a
We
fortress.
had a small discussion, and there was a sheriff out of, I want to say Tennessee, but he implemented in a small county that he had. And his thought was he had police officers from the city and from the sheriff's office that needed part-time jobs. Okay? So his idea was to put his police officers, give them part-time jobs being substitute teachers in the schools. Now the beauty of that thought process is there's always a variability where nobody could ever make a plan, you know, saying you've got one police officer you're going to have to contend with, and then we're off on the run. Because you may have the one SRO, which is a school resource officer, but then you may have 3 people that called in sick or off on vacation. So you have 3 other armed police officers in there that are substitute teaching that day, and they didn't have any idea how, you know, that it's that variability that keeps it, you know, to the point where nobody would ever be able to plan.
The mentality of these shooters, not to loss.
Any other questions?
When you're talking about changing the way we build our schools to make them more safe, are we considering how that might look for the kids? I mean, if you do put them, to use your word, in a fortress, won't that send the message to them that the world isn't a safe place that they can't trust?
No, you're going to see that the only thing that would change would be the way the entrance is structured. I mean, if you look at Davis High School, for instance, if you walked in the front of Davis High School, you'll see that you have a double set of doors, and then you have multiple sets right there, and then you're into the main structure of the building, which means you have free reins everywhere it goes. Now, what we're talking about is not when you're in the building, how it looks inside the building. It's who gets in and out of the building when you're you know, letting the students come in and letting the parents come in and make sure that there's structure on who's allowed in and who's allowed out. Some of the stuff they've got out now, the windows, you wouldn't even tell that they're, you know, bulletproof, you know, windows. We carry some of that stuff here at the sheriff's department, and you look through it and there's no difference. There's no distortion or anything else. So this is something that, again, it just needs to be evaluated, looked at, see how you can apply it and still maintain the integrity of the building to where the kids look like they're not sitting in one of our correctional facilities while they're going to school.
And I guess that was, I just wanted to make sure that you are considering how that might look to the children.
Absolutely.
I'm not
And
against doing that to make the schools safer, but I do think that we need to consider how that looks from their point of view.
And I think you can get the best of both worlds.
If you look at some of the